No.
It's September 30th, 2024, and I'm with Mr. John J. Jeckovich, a distinguished, honorable World War II combat veteran who was awarded the Purple Heart and 2 Bronze Stars. Mr. Jeckovich was from Company H, the 2nd Battalion, you can close that door if you like, 2nd Battalion, the 291st Regiment of the 75th Infantry Division of the U.S. Army during World War II. Mr. Jeckovich lives by the motto, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. Before I start reading, Mr. Jeckovich, what's your dog tag number?
42659.
We're going to pick up on chapter 19 on page 555, and this is when you're courting Delphine Stulak. And this is where we'll pick up here. An interesting note on the back page of the book is a nice writing about his mother. This is in the last page of the back cover of the book, and I just noticed it now after reading Mr. Jeckovich for a long time. On the back page of the book it reads, "Mother did not relish the role of motherhood, yet she excelled in its functions and responsibilities. She was quick to point out its hardships and tribulations, but did not ask for help nor seek out sympathy. She was a stern taskmaster, always seeking the best for her children, narrowed by her limited experience and knowledge. Her one outstanding trait was her integrity and her unabated loyalty to those who cared for her and loved. Mother's unflinching religion always stood her in good stead, and it was her salvation and a great source of courage and determination. Although her deep religious convictions were a staunch support for her, the one struggle she constantly fought against was the severe sense of loneliness which is always with her, even though she would never admit to it, hold on her. It was quite apparent to anyone who loved her." So your mother, that was a nice part I found in the back of the book, the final cover. So your mother was a very religious person.
Yeah.
Roman Catholic.
Roman Catholic.
She went to Our Lady of Rosary Church.
Right.
Morning masses, 5:30, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
How'd she get there?
Usually walked.
How'd she get there in the winter?
Probably walked. I took her. Or somebody took her. Small Sally was driving then too.
And what did your mother do at night pertaining to her religion?
Well, she crocheted.
But at night, wouldn't she say the rosary?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before she went to bed, yeah.
Yeah.
Underneath, before the bed, yeah.
I remember your mother once told me that she would like to have died on the altar in Our Lady of Rosary Church as she's receiving communion. It didn't happen that way, but that was Mr. Jeckovich's mother, Anna Jeckovich's thoughts. And so that's a wonderful story. And was your father a Roman Catholic also?
Yes. Not active though.
Not active, but he was a Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
Were you baptized in the Catholic Church?
Yes. Oh.
Our Lady of Rosary?
No, St. Stanislaus.
St. Stanislaus.
Yeah.
St. Stanislaus is a Polish church that is probably less than 200 yards from Our Lady of Rosary Catholic Church. And it's interesting, as small of a town or city Niagara Falls was back in its day, there must have been 12, 13, or 14 Catholic churches. It's hard to imagine. I think Niagara Falls now probably has 1, maybe 2. Do you remember who your godfather was?
Who?
Do you remember who your godfather was?
Uncle Andy.
Uncle Andy. Do you remember who your godmother was?
And Sophie.
And Sophie. Well, that must have been a nice affair.
25 minutes.
That must have been a nice affair. It's interesting that St. Stanislaus, which is closer to your house than Our Lady of Rosary, and they predominantly had Polish masses. It's interesting that your mother didn't go there. She always went to Our Lady of the Rosary.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to understand why. She liked that church much better. Wow. We have a lot of comments that came in, and I thank you for all the beautiful comments you said about Mr. John J. Jeckovich. There's many of them, and we thank you. And most of the questions today are about the French resistance. A lot of people aren't familiar or know about the French resistance.
The what?
French resistance. I have a lot of questions about French resistance. Before I do that, we'll do that a little bit later. But if you have any messages or questions for Mr. John J. Jeckovich, text them at 407-366-0000. He'll answer all of them personally. 407-366-0000. Or as we say in the beautiful island of Defusky Island, South Carolina, we say, text Mr. Jeckovich at 407-366-0000. 407-366-0000. Here's your chance to talk with, email, text, a real World War II combat veteran. During World War II, there were 16,400,000 young men and ladies in the World War II. 16,300,000 are gone. There's about 100,000 left, maybe less. But an interesting point, there's less than 7,000 actual combat World War II veterans left. Only 7,000. And these guys are in their late 90s, early 100s. And we're losing them at a rate of 150 a day, so do the math.
Yeah.
So do the math. So here's your chance. Look at them. Text them. Ask a question. Get the real deal. Right here. Ask a question, anything you want, and I'll be sure Mr. Jeckovich reads it and replies. Most of the, before we start reading Courtney of Delphine, there's been one text after another about the French resistance. I know you wrote about it, I'll read 2 or 3 pages that you wrote about, but could you just basically tell us, in your own words, before I read what you wrote, what the French resistance is?
The French resistance?
Yeah. The one that Renee was in.
Oh, Renee. She was half nun, and her brother got killed, the other brother got killed then, so she dropped her novice and got a resistance.
And what did the French resistance do?
That went after the Germans and spied on them.
Here's what Mr. Jeckovich wrote earlier, 25 years ago. We mentioned Renee. She was a Roman Catholic nun. Her parents, this is when Germany was occupying Paris for 4 long years. That Mr. Jeckovich and many other soldiers ran the Nazis out. But during this time when they were occupied, Paris was occupied by the Germans. Renee's parents, which were young people, Renee was only in her 20s, so I imagine her parents were only in their 40s. They were tortured and killed by the Nazis. And then later Renee found out that her younger brothers, which were probably just teenagers, were killed and tortured by the Nazis. She left the convent and basically joined the French resistance. And she had a beautiful studio in downtown Paris, in which she was a great artist, by the way. And she'd be in the studio painting portraits of SS and
German high
officers. And she was doing that not because she loved these officers, it's because she was gaining information.
They were eagle.
Yeah, that's correct. Mr. Jeckovich got a good point. These SS officers had egos as big as tractor-trailer trucks. They had egos as big as tractor-trailer trucks, and they loved to have their portraits hanging up on the walls. Why do you think so many of those paintings were never picked up that were left there with all those officers. What do you think happened to those officers?
German?
Yeah.
They probably got transferred or killed.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to read what Mr. Jeckovich wrote many years ago. The crackdown in France. After the Germans occupied the Vichy zone, officials throughout France came under mounting pressure to help implement the final solution. Some who did so later claimed ignorance of the fact that saw that the Jews were rounded up were doomed. But the secret Nazi plan to ignite the Holocaust exposed in December 1942, when the Allied countries, known as the United Nations, declared that the Germans were carrying out Hitler's oft-repeated intention to exterminate the Jewish people in Europe.
Oh boy.
So when Mr. Jeckovich was also taking part at the end of the war, breaking the chains, breaking the locks, taking over the Holocaust camps, the prisoner of war camps. And what were you told not to do with the prisoners?
Don't feed them.
And why is that?
Because their diet was restricted when they lived there.
All right. And so here we go. I'm going to read a little bit more on the French resistance. It's very important. That announcement broadcast in various languages by the BBC Overseas Service. What was the BBC?
British Broadcasting.
All right. Broadcast in various languages by the BBC Overseas was based partly on the report by the Polish government in exile in London. So the Polish government left Poland and now they're in London.
Yeah. Oh, they got kicked out, yeah.
The mass extermination of Jews in German-occupied Poland. So they were killing all these Jews,
Yeah.
so sad, in Poland. Among those who gathered that intelligence were Jan Karski, an officer who went underground after Poland was occupied. He learned from the Jewish resistance, the leaders that was deported from Warsaw Ghetto were not being resettled in the east, but they were being killed in gas chambers along with the Romies. Those in that ghetto staged an armed uprising in April of 1943 and died fighting the German troops. I bet it's better to die fighting the German troops than being gassed in a chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these chambers were horrible. They would have families, men, women, husbands, wives, children, aunts, uncles.
Lost everything.
All stripped of clothes, stuck in these chambers and turn on the gas. What a miserable way to die. What unbelievable, cruel people to do something like this. You never heard of something like this. But killed in the gas chambers along the Romies. Few who helped detain the Jews or risk arrest to save them remained ignorant of their fate. They were facing a genocide. Recalled one Frenchman who helped hide the Jews. Help hiding the Jews was part of the jobs of the French resistance. Anyone taken by the Germans was dead. So if the Germans took you and you're Jewish, you're dead.
Yeah.
And you might have a real...
They were marked too. They're marked.
Yeah. And you might have a very, very horrible end. As threatened with the execution were those operating escape lines. Combat line leader Andre Young was seized in January 1943 and sent to Ravensbrück. Ravensbrück is a horrible prison war camp, where she survived because the Germans wrongly considered her a mere accessory to her father, who was executed. Despite the crackdown, the number of airmen and refugees spirited out of France increased in 1943 as the Combat Line revived under the new leadership and smaller networks arose that invaded the Gestapo. By overrunning the South, the Germans deprived the Vichy regime of legitimacy and drove more French patriots to join the resistance. So, worse it got, the more people joined the resistance.
Yeah.
The more people joined the resistance. So, the worse it got, the more people joined the resistance. The French patriots to join the resistance. Then the SS and its Vichy accomplices could capture and kill them. SS were a brutal group of people. I just can't believe how someone...
They're fanatics. They were fanatics.
Yeah. In the late 1942, a sadistic SS officer. Now, aren't they all sadistic? But this is one that everyone knows about. Mr. Jeckovich speaks of him. This is a real low-life son of a bitch. At this moment that I'm speaking, right now, he's still burning in hell. Rightfully so. In the late 1942, a sadistic SS officer named Klaus Barbie, he was one of the worst of the worst, took charge of Gestapo.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the Gestapo when you were fighting?
No. They were behind the lines. They were undercover.
Behind the lines?
Yeah, undercover.
Rear echelon?
Yeah, the undercover
Okay,
work.
this Barbie's like the worst of the worst. He's burning in hell right now. I can just see his daily tortures, that son of a bitch. And Gestapo in the southern city of Lyon. And Barbie boasted, he was a real animal. Barbie boasted, and he said, I was only a lieutenant, he boasted, but I had more power than a general. So even though Barbie was a lieutenant, he claimed he had more power.
Yeah, well, see, he was on the front line. The other ones were behind. He was the one in control.
Barbie was on the lookout for all resistance leaders like Jean Malone. So Barbie was taking it on his own to find, seek, and kill, torture the French resistance.
Yeah.
That's what Barbie did. Let's see here. What else, Mr. J say? Look out for the resistant leaders like Jean Malone. Assigned by General Charles de Gaulle. Did you hear much about Charles de Gaulle during your time at the war?
Yeah.
Was he a good leader?
Well, behind the lines.
The Free French commander in London to unify the opposition groups. Those groups included militant French communists who assassinated Germans and exposed the populace to reprisals, as well as the staunch anti-communists like Captain Henry Freenway, leader of Combat, a large resistance moving in the South. Malone had attempted suicide in 1940 by slicing his throat rather than being forced under a torture to sign a false statement accusing black troops from French Senegal who were massacred by the Germans of raping and murdering French civilians. So there's all kinds of different groups trying to kill the Germans.
Yeah.
Not just the French resistance.
Yeah.
There was many. Let's see. He was left with a scar that he hid with a scarf when he became a Gestapo target. Now the Gestapo was looking for this guy who had a big scar on his neck.
Secret police, yeah.
Yeah, covered it with his he covered it with his scarf. Okay. Overcoming oppositions from the critics like Freenway, who suspected him of being a communist sympathizer, he secretly convened his first meeting of the National Resistance Council in Paris on May 27, 1943. Freenway did not attend, but Combat was represented as well as communist and all other opposition groups. So this really bad person was a Gestapo officer, which was Klaus Barbie. He was notorious for torturing those who fell into his grasp. In 1943, he went after the French resistance leader, Jean Malone, who hid scars from his neck from a suicide attempt in a German jail in 1940. Here we go about Little. Little was settled in the initial meeting, but represented a triumph for Mullen. He was very, very happy for a friend who dined with him afterward recalled. That evening he was relaxed and it was extremely rare. It was only a brief respite for a man whose purse was closing on him. His pursuers were closing on him. That's an interesting part. He told his sister not to contact him even if his ailing mother died. So he told his sister, even if our mother's dying, don't find me because the Germans are. It's the Gestapo's following their family to get to him. Don't even contact me if mother's dying. And so he told his sister not to contact him even if his mother was dying. They would arrest me at her funeral. So he knew if he went to the funeral, he's done.
Yeah.
The Gestapo would kill him. On June 9th, General Charles de Gaulle's candidate to head the secret army that would support the Allied invasion of France, was arrested in Paris while awaiting René Hardy, who served under the freeway in the combat and had drawn up plans to sabotage the French railways. Hardy too was seized while on his way to meet Desilets and interrogated by the Gestapo before being released. That should have barred him from further resistance operations as a possible Gestapo informant, but Hardy concealed his arrest. Molen was then arranged a meeting in line in June of 21 to choose a replacement for Desilets. Ferme sent a deputy who brought along Hardy. Soon after Molen arrived, Barbie and his agents barged in and hauled off all the suspects in handcuffs except the Hardy, who bolted and was grazed by a bullet fired at him. Wow, that's amazing. Jean Moulou did not long survive the torture to which he was subject to. One of the last witnesses to see him alive was Christian Panu, who had been arrested earlier and saw Moulin stretched out on a bench, half dead, in a lined prison on June 24.
Yeah.
He had lost consciousness and his hollow eyes seemed to be sunken into his head. There was an ugly bluish wound on his temple. A soft rasping sound escaped from his swollen lips. If Moulin had talked while he was being tortured, a devastating roundup of French resistance, here we go, the French resistant leaders undoubtedly would have followed and none ensued. So Moulin, even though he was tortured, he didn't tell who the rest of the French resistance was.
Yeah.
Hardy was widely suspected of betraying Moulin, but was acquitted of the offense after the war. There would be endless speculation about who informed on Moulin, but there is no mystery as to who murdered him. He died in German custody, and if Barbie did not personally deliver the blows that killed him, he had Moulin blood on his hands. One of the many crimes earned Barbie the title of Butcher of Lion.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. You remember Barbie, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Honored in post-war France as a national hero, Moulin joined a long list of men and women who resisted Nazi brutality to their last breath. While Gestapo agents were closing in on him, SS counterintelligence agents in Paris were breaking up the SOE Prosper Nexpert at Noor and Caen, joined as a radio operator in June of 1943. By the month's end, Frank Soto, the head of the network, and several of his agents had been arrested. Henry Dork, a French pilot involved in SOE infiltrations, was suspected of betraying them. But like Hardy, Dietrich was later tried and acquitted and cause of the network's collapse and never officially determined. Kahn eluded arrest for several months by moving frequently one hideout to another. Like, keep moving, be fluid.
Yeah, keep moving, keep moving.
Otherwise you'll be arrested. By September, this is only one more page. So by September, she was an SOE operator still transmitting to London from Paris. That's the underground resistance or French resistance. And what did that look like when you were in the French resistance underground?
Yeah.
What did it look like when you went down with René in the French resistance headquarters?
Well, there was a dump, it was down in the sewers.
Yeah, that's where they're transmitting from, giving the information to Paris. Is exactly.
That's where the radio was.
Yeah. German agents posted a description of her and offered a reward for her capture. Seized in October, she was interrogated by Hans Joseph Kiefler, the SD chief in Paris. She told us nothing, he recalled. We could not rely on anything she said. After attempting to escape, Kahn, that's a lady, received increasingly harsh treatment. Her ordeal at Dachau, a concentration camp where she and other women were infiltrated France for an SOE, Beekman, DeMarc, and Pourman were executed in September of 1944. A prisoner said that Kahn was severely beating beforehand. Her last word as her executioner pressed a gun to the back of her head was liberation. So she never speaked. They beat the hell out of her. And then when they put the gun to the back of the head and pulled the trigger, she's beat to hell, out of energy. They blew her head off. Her last word was liberation. Liberation. Perhaps she
oh boy, yeah.
These are very brave ladies. Perhaps she knew then, as news of the Allied advances passed the word of mouth to the dark cells in the Nazi Germany, and that liberty she and other secret agents fought for France was now soon to prevail. And now this is where you came in. You came in now, after all the French resistance were killed and murdered, then the United States Army, Infantry Division, came in and liberated.
Cleaned them out, yeah, cleaned them out.
You kicked out all the Nazis out of Paris. But during this time, these ladies and men of the French resistance were doing their best, but they were being slaughtered, and they were being tortured by the Nazis and the SS and the Gestapo. A lot of young ladies and a lot of young men died.
3.5.
A lot of young men died before
Their time, yeah.
before your combat soldiers like Mr. Jeckovich came in to liberate them. And as we started the book about Renee, the nun that joined the French resistance, she was later tortured brutally and then died. Like we read about the one lady in the French resistance, they beat the hell out of her, unrecognizable. And then they stuck the gun, the rifle, at the back of her head. Her last word was liberty. She was not about to speak. None of those ladies were about to speak or give any information that it might have been detrimental to the people of Paris. So these ladies died as true heroine, So that's when we answer the questions that Mr. Jeckovich talked about the French resistance. It was a shame, but that's what we had to do to get the Germans out of Paris. That's what we had to do. And so, on a lighter note, I'm going to start reading chapter 19 about courting Delphine. Before I start reading Courting Delphine, could you tell us briefly about what Courting Delphine is all about?
Courting Delphine?
Courting Delphine. What is this? What are we about to read here?
Well, I knew Delphine at the dance hall, the one in Buffalo.
What was the name of the dance hall?
Delwood? What the hell?
Delwood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Second floor, Main Street?
$1 floor, get in, yeah.
So tell us just briefly before I read about it, what was Courting Delphine about?
Courting Delphine?
Dating Delphine, yeah.
Well, it started out real slow. I met her at the dance. Her, Agnes, and Rosa, they all worked at the Grants. And they're like a triumphant trio.
That's W.T. Grants?
W.T. Grants,
Major,
yeah.
department store chain that
Yeah.
went bankrupt and closed all doors.
Yeah, they also worked at the Grants. So they were inseparable. And then Agnes was the oldest one. She dropped off first. And then Rosalie was sickly too, and she passed away. And then that's all was left was Delphine.
So then you started taking Delphine by yourself to different functions, movies, dinners.
Yeah.
Meeting her parents.
I didn't meet her parents till 6-7 months after I knew her.
And then how many months after that did she meet your mother?
Oh, that was about a year later, yeah.
And how did your mother accept her?
Well, I thought she would accept her all right, but she did great. I was there, brought her in Sunday, and the first thing my mother said, "You get in that kitchen and finish those cupboards up. Well, I'll see this young lady over here in the living room."
Wait a minute.
30 seconds.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So your mother separated the two.
Yeah. And then she was talking to Delphine in the living room, and I said, I was wondering how poor Delphine was getting it. And then it was, "Delphine, honey, this, Delphine, honey, that." And they were inseparable. That was the best thing that happened to my mother. My mother was alone, and Delphine was a great help. Great help for her.
Wow, perfect.
And then she taught her how to cook.
How perfect it worked out. Tell me when.
2 seconds.
Perfect.